haunting images that will leave you speechless. Jiminy crickets. Check out the size of that grasshopper. This photo was taken back in 1937, and it was published in the local papers. On September 9, 1937, the following headline appeared on the front page of the Tomah, Wisconsin Monitor-Herald. Can you imagine being the logger to happen upon this horrific sight? This is Stucky, the hound dog who got himself stuck in a tree and is now a mummy. Stucky was discovered in a lumber truck back in the 80s after loggers had cut up a chestnut oak tree. They decided against sending the poor little guy to the pulp mill and instead donated it to Forest World, a tourist attraction in Georgia devoted to trees. Yes, that's a real thing. Stucky is remarkably preserved. He is believed to have been mummified for an estimate of 20 years by the time it was found. The accompanying sign for his display explains how the pup could have been so well preserved out in the wild. This photo was taken back in 1886 and features young Ella Harper, also known as Camel Girl. Due to a rare orthopedic condition, she could contort her knees completely backwards and crawl around on the ground. Ella was the star of Harris's Nickel Plate Circus in 1886. Death masks are sometimes wax or plaster cast of a mold that was taken from the face of a dead person. Essentially, a death mask is a true portrait of the dead, although some changes can be made if desired. Sometimes changes are made to the eyes of the mask in order to make it appear as though the subject were still alive. Super unnerving. Since ancient Egypt, they have served as aids to portrait sculptors, and for the last few centuries, they have been kept as mementos of the dead. During the Victorian era of 1800s, Napoleon's conquest of Egypt led to a whole slew of disrespectful acts against Egypt's history by the Europeans. Mummies were not given the respect they deserved at this point in time. In fact, they were treated like gag gifts. They were sold by street vendors, as can be seen here. The European elites would purchase them to hold mummy unwrapping parties, which involved unwrapping mummies in front of a cheering audience. During this period, well-preserved remains of ancient Egyptians were also ground into powder and then consumed as a medicinal remedy. Here we have a chilling image of a young girl in a graveyard, looking down at her reflection in the lake. It appears she is casting two reflections, or that some unseen entity is by her side and only visible through the water. Who she is, where she is, and when this photo was taken remains unknown. By the look of the photograph and her attire, it's been estimated to have originated around the early 1900s. The photo was allegedly analyzed and deemed untampered with, but many insist it's a composite. The photograph is known by the name The Reflecting Pool by Peter A. Cohen, who has gathered an extensive collection of old and mysterious-looking photographs such as this one over the last 25 years. This and many other similar photos can be found within the pages of the book Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. Pictured here is the heart of Auguste Delagrange, who was said to have killed at least 40 people in the early 1900s and was suspected of being a real-life vampire. He was executed in 1912 for his crimes, and as you can see here, they shoved a little stake through his vampiric heart to prevent him from ever rising again. Now it's mummified. Stonehenge remains one of the greatest mysteries in the world. No one knows who built it, why, or even how, but theories are plentiful and most centered around mysticism. In 2007, archaeologists discovered the remains of a village. This led to theories of Stonehenge serving as a sacred burial ground, for ancient kings perhaps. But considering the fractured condition of the remains, it would make more sense if it served as a place of pilgrimage for the sick. The rocks themselves have been long believed to have healing powers. This comes from the legend that the stones were brought in from Ireland for their magical healing properties, which they were infused with by the sorcerer Merlin. This right here is some serious nightmare fuel. Could you imagine this thing alive and well, and staring at you like you're a walking sandwich? Although, its skeletal remains would look right at home in the H.R. Geiger Museum. Perhaps in the form of a stair railing. This beast isn't even the biggest of its kind. Anacondas can grow to more than 29 feet, and weigh more than 550 pounds. Some have measured more than 12 inches in diameter. The females grow to be significantly larger than males. What a ghastly tradition! The residents of Vinzone, Italy, hang out with the mummified remains of their dead relatives. They live with the corpses in their homes, seat them at their dining tables, and take them out for some fresh air, as this photo shows. The macabre tradition began back in the 14th century. When the Great Plague swept through the village, so many residents died that there wasn't room in the cemetery to bury them, so the bodies were stacked up in the church basement. Fast forward 300 years to 1647, when the church was being rebuilt. The bodies, now mummified, had to be moved, but the residents believed that God had sent their ancestors back to them. So families reclaimed their mummified relatives and took them home. The tradition continued until the 1950s and was photographed by Life magazine photographer Jack Burns. So that was all for today's video. Let us know what you think about it in the comments section and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on our latest uploads. With that said, we will see you next time. Until then, take care.